and welcome to the WarmJuniper Knits podcast. This is episode 3. That's actually 6. Okay. My name's Christine. I'm coming to you from Bend, which is in Central Oregon, where I live with my husband and our 2 cats, which are behind me and after my fiber. There you go. This is a knitting and spinning podcast primarily, so if you are coming back after my first 2 episodes, thank you so much for sticking with me in this, and if you're a new viewer, I hope you enjoy. I'm WarmJuniper on all of the relevant social medias. I'm most active on Instagram, which is kind of amusing to me because I didn't ever really use it pre-podcast. I did have one, but it is pretty empty. And now I just can't stop using it, looking at everyone's gorgeous pictures. So that's where I'm at. Their administrative stuff. I have a couple of thank yous. First, to my friend Mary. Hi, Mary. Who made the new intro for me. She is a filmmaker on the East Coast and saw this when I accidentally posted it to my private social media. I was like, honey, I can do better than this. Let me help you. So now I have a super great intro. So thanks, Mary. And also to Elise of the My Two Tricks podcast and Lynn from Sunshine and Bubblegum, who both mentioned me on their podcast in the last 2 weeks. So that was incredibly sweet of you guys and kind and not something that I expected at all. So I appreciate that very much. And with that, I think we can get going with some finished objects. So if you were with me last week, I was pretty close to finishing my husband's socks, and I'm happy to report that I have a finished pair of socks. So these are the Knit Picks Stroll in the Raven colorway, which, let's see if we can get it to show up here. It's pretty dark, but it's navy, teal, plums, variegated yarn, and I made it's basically my vanilla sock recipe. I just put the texture pattern from Hermione's Everyday Sock on it as well. It's got a Fish Lips Kiss heel. I started them from the toe up. He's got 2x2 ribbing. Lessons learned from this sock were my gauge changes a lot between a 2.5 and a 2.25, which is a US 1 versus a US 1.5. Sometimes that's listed as a US 1 also, which is how you do things like accidentally order the wrong needle from Knit Picks, which I did. And then I had an awful time trying to figure out my gauge with these socks and why I couldn't get my normal stitch count to work, etc., etc., etc. So the socks are a little on the big side for him, which is saying something because he's got monstrously large feet. And also, let's see, right, short row heels for my husband apparently are not going to be the go-to method for sock making for him in the future because they pretty much want to slide right off of his heel, which I'm a little bummed by because I do really like this heel. It works great for me and my socks, but something about his arch, I can just tell just when he was trying them on that if he was going to be walking anywhere that he had any friction on the back of his heel, that they would probably slide right off. And they're already kind of loose and baggy as it is. So, oh well. Next time I knit him a pair of socks, I'll just do them from the top down, and I'll do a flat pin gusset, which he has another pair that was made that way, and they fit him much better. Also, one of them is noticeably longer than the other, and I'm not really sure how that happened because I did measure them as I was knitting, so don't know about that. I think maybe what happened is the first one I knit, I had him try on, and then he insisted on wearing it around the house on just one foot for a while, and it got not only super stretched out, but also covered in cat hair and floor gunk and stuff. So I dunked it in the sink and scrubbed at it, both to wash it, and also I was trying to shrink them just a little bit. I was trying to see if I could get it to felt up a little bit and be a better fit for his foot, and I did not succeed in that because it's super wash yarn, so you dunk it in the water and it just goes boom and gets big. And that is the sock that is longer than the other one. even though they have both been through a wash cycle in my washing machine, so cold water and light tumble dry. But he likes them, and they fit him well enough for the way he wants to wear them, which is schlubbing around the house or in a pair of sandals. So that's that, and that's my first finished object. My other, I guess you can call them finished objects. I'm in the process of knitting a baby blanket for a friend of mine, his baby that's due in January. So I started doing this. I decided on the Vivid blanket, which is a pattern by Tin Can Knits, and that is a blanket that is knit in squares that you then seam up, and the squares have kind of a lace motif in the middle. So I started making squares. Here's my first one, so you can see. This is yarn, this is somewhat mystery yarn from one of my Tuesday morning finds. It's, I think, the Gentle Merino. So it's a merino acrylic blend, I think. Yeah. And I've got it in 4 primary colors in these pastels, and I just am so pleased with the way this turned out for this blanket. It's about the perfect size. These are around 8.5 inches square. I used a US 5 needle. I have 2 of them, so 1 and 2. And what I found was kind of interesting because those the balls of the Gentle Merino come in, they're 50 grams, and that's about 130 yards or so. So it's kind of a DK weight. And according to the pattern, you should be able to get, there's a cat that's chewing on a baseball hat. Mowgli. Yeah, he can have it. I should not have been able to get 2 of these out of that ball of yarn, which is why I was so concerned about my yardage in the last episode and why I went and bought more of it, because I was convinced that I was going to run out before I got anything near or approaching a blanket. And I don't know if it's my gauge or if the pattern is just being like super generous about the yardage, but yeah, I got 2 of these, no problem. I have not enough for a whole nother square in that yarn, in that particular ball, but I've got plenty, and considering I've got 8 balls, I'm going to have a significant amount of leftover, so I might be able to do like booties or a hat or something out of it, because I'm going to have a lot, more than enough to seam, and I even left myself a good, I don't know, it's not quite 3 feet, I don't know, anyway, plenty of seaming yarn on both of these. I use a US 5, I think is what I said, and this is, yeah, rounded DK weight. So I will have a 16 square blanket, and at 8.5 inches across, that'll give me a blanket that is around 3.5 feet square, which is just about perfect for a newborn, and that's a good size to lay on the floor on and tuck into a car seat, that kind of thing. So I'm pretty darn pleased with those. Yeah, I'm looking forward to making more of these. It took me about an hour and a half per square. So that's 1, 2. I guess you can call this finished objects. I mean, the blanket will be the official finished object, but these are completed things and they have been blocked, which to me counts as kind of finished. I also have a hoe, which will be a nice segue into works in progress. But if you do follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I was working on a pair of socks last week while I was traveling, and I have finished one, which is right here. So this is the Flying North pattern, which is by Maria Monska. She does the Stitched in Sweden podcast, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. This is the free pattern, and it's very, very simple. All it is a purl ridge going down the front of the sock. I didn't pattern the back on these. I thought about it, but I think I just kind of prefer the pattern on the front. Maybe if it was a texture pattern, I would do it on the way, but this is mostly just a graphic motif. Anyway, the light in here is showing these just a little bit darker, maybe slightly grayer than they are in person. This is also Knit Picks Stroll Tonal in the Cucumber colorway, and it's this really lovely, yeah, lightly variegated kind of minty green. Looks like cucumbers. And I was I had tried to use this yarn for a couple of other things, particularly a shawl I was thinking about doing. And in that shawl, I had used it as part of the lace section. And at the time, I was like, I don't even know why I bought this yarn, because the variation in the lace, the dark bits looked like I'd gotten it dirty. And I kept picking at it, kind of scrubbing at it with my finger, going, when did this have a chance to get dirt on it? It hasn't been outside my knitting bag. And that's just the natural variation in the color. Now, in a larger bit of stockinette, that just looks lovely, I think. I mean, I don't think these look at all dirty. I think it just looks like the color of the yarn is what I would expect it to be. There, that's slightly closer. I think the light changed a little bit. Anyway, so I'm glad that I saved them for the socks, because I just love the way these came out. And I knit this in no time at all. I think I did this in about over a 2 or 3 day period at the most, and that was I did like the whole foot in one go, I think. There's something about this pattern just goes whoosh, zooms, and it's in such a soft, lovely color that I was really, I guess, inspired to finish it, because I'm really excited to wear them. One thing about the pattern, and I can tell you this because it is free, is that in order to get the points of the chevrons centered on your sock, you need to have an odd number of stitches on each side of your sock. So I knit these magic loops, so I had needle 1 and then needle 2, but if you were doing this with DPNs, you need a pattern or a stitch count that in total is an even number, but when you divide it by 2 is an odd number. And I normally knit my socks on 56 stitches, which in half of 56 is 28. So I could either go up 2 stitches or I could decrease by 2 stitches. And I was a little paranoid because of my experience with the other Knit Picks stroll, in that it got loose and stretched out quite a bit. And I was already knitting it at a lighter gauge looser gauge than I think my socks normally come out. So I opted to go down. Excuse me. So these are done on 54 stitches. They do pull just a teeny tiny bit across my instep. What did they get? Instep? Arch of my foot? Crease? Hinge? I don't know. The top of my foot. But I can already tell just from when I was slipping them on and off that will loosen up as I wear them, and it'll be fine. It's not uncomfortable at all. These have a fish lips kiss heel, which fits me perfectly fine, so I stuck with that. I did knit them toe up, although I think this pattern can be done either direction. You would just have to flip the chart. Really super simple. And then a 1x1 rib, which is also somewhat unusual for me, but I knew that the 54 is not divisible by 4, so I couldn't do a 2x2 and have it come out 2x2. So I needed to do 1x1, and I like the look of it, actually. I think that's quite pretty, and it kind of goes with the, just the gentle patterning on this. So I'm super pleased with it. I'm really excited. I haven't cast on the second one yet. That's my project this evening, I think, is to get started on the second sock, but I'm pretty darn happy with those. Yeah, so that is my hoe. Works in progress. If you recall, I was getting ready last episode. I had a needle adjacent project, which was to start the Daybreak shawl by Stephen West, and I have done so. That's upside down. And I made quite a bit of progress on this. Wait, no, it was right side up the first time. This was my Texas knitting project. Got a lot of this done in the car and in the airport. It's larger than you'd think. There's over 200 stitches on this already, and I've got to do about, how many is that? 1, 2, 3. I've got to do about 4 more times the stripes on this, so it's going to be huge, which I'm really excited about because I wanted a huge shawl. So here we are. I am through the front section. As you can see, this is the Charlie sock that I purchased in Portland, and I was surprised by how much variation there was in this. I didn't realize in the cake that it was going to have quite so much of both. You can kind of see there's patches in there look slightly greeny, and also the patches that are a darker orange kind of gold color. And I think it's fabulous the way that it's coming out. Adore it, which is funny because and this occurred to me about halfway through the stripes that I have, is that I just ripped out a shawl that was in the same color scheme. It was blue and yellow because I didn't like the combination. I was sort of like, well, Christine, where was your brain when you bought the colors for this? Who knows? I don't know if it's the variation or if it's the tone or the fact that the colors themselves are tonal and not solids, but I am super in love with the way that this is coming out right now. And I haven't touched this since I got back from Texas, which was middle of let's see, today's Saturday, September 10th, and I got back on Tuesday, the 7th, 6th, 7th, something like that. So I haven't played with it in a couple of days, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that is going to turn out. So I would say I'm maybe somewhere between a quarter and a third of the way done. There's a lot of shawl left to knit. Like I said, the gold, that's the Charlie sock, and the blue is Malabrigo sock in, I think, Aguas, something like that. I'll put it below, is the blue. So that is where I've come along with that. That's really all I have for works in progress. I mean, that cucumber sock was a work in progress, and I didn't take a lot more with me to Texas because I knew that I was also going to be driving a lot, which I did. So I think we can move on to acquisitions. I don't have any Yarny acquisitions this week, but I did have to report that my replacement needle from Knit Picks came. So I now have a new US 2.5 millimeter needle. I can't see myself using this a whole lot. Not only because of the gauge issues that I had, but also because, if you recall, I broke my first needle, which is why I got a replacement from them anyway, and was able to repair it, and then it broke on the other side as I was using it again. So not on the same place, not even the same tip. It just snapped in my hand again, and I wasn't even knitting with it. I think I'm sorry, this is gross, but I had an itch, and I just went with the needle, and it went pop, like broke right in half, just from the tiny bit of pressure from that. So it's like, okay. I think I would really like these needles if they were, if I was using a larger size. But as it is for the teeny tiny sock needles, I think I will pass on the wooden ones. I have them as a reserve needle. They're around and they're perfectly serviceable. I just think I will opt to use metal in the future. And my metal needle of choice is actually I have it, I can show you, is a ChowGoo 40-inch red lace, and that's a bit twisted up. So it looks like this. And this thing has been used and abused for a couple of years now, so it's starting to get pretty kinky, which the red lace is has the wire inside, and then it's wrapped in the red plastic. So it's quite stiff. I have never had a problem with the stiffness, although I can see now where I'm starting to develop kinks from using magic loop in this. And I don't think that's going to be a problem going forward, but I thought maybe the next time I bought a 40-inch metal sock needle that I would try something different just to see if I had the same experience, which is what I did. And I used, oh hey cat, I used some Amazon gift card that I had to buy Haya. So this is just a fixed circular, 40 inches, 2.25 millimeter. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you can see, but Haya, their cords are different colors depending on the kind of needle you buy. So I have an interchangeable set of Hayas, and they are the Sharps version, and the cords are a light blue. And from what I understand, the not sharp version, just the regular points of theirs in the interchangeables, come on a clear cord, and apparently they're fixed come on a green cord. This is not really showing up because it's reflective, but yeah. I don't know why that tickled me so much, but I was like, I can't wait to use these. So these are cool. I'll probably cast on another pair of socks for Paul soon, and I'll give these a shot. So we'll see how they do. I was looking for metal, and the nice thing about Hi is, not to digress too much, but they're stainless steel. Same thing with the Chow Goose. So I couldn't use another Knit Picks needle, or I'm not sure if the carbons would work because they have metal at the joins and at the tips, and those are typically nickel plated, and I have a hard time with those. They irritate the skin on my hands because I have really sensitive skin and I have a nickel allergy. So I have found that using nickel plated needles in the past makes my palms itchy, which is just not what you want when you use your hands a lot. So anyway, these are typically my go-to. Hi's. Looking forward to using those. That's all I have acquired this week. Next up is spinning, and I have quite a bit to show you with spinning. So first of all, I did finish applying the last little bit of my 3-ply. This is the Polwarth that I was working on. This is the first bit that I did. That's the 3 ounces, and then I got my last little bit. So now the full 4 ounces has been spun and plied and washed and snapped, and it's ready to go. Here it is, the last little bit. I was weighing this out on a kitchen scale and whatnot on my plying bobbins, which, by the way, plying bobbins are just toilet paper tubes that I have wound the singles onto, so nothing special there. But I had wound them off and weighed them in what I had hoped was approximation of the right length so that I could get an even 3-ply, and about 2/3 of the way through this, I ran out of yarn on one bobbin and did not really have it in me to sit there and try and measure out what at that point was like, would have been 1/8 of an ounce or something to try and get it even to finish the last little bit. But I'm also stubborn and I didn't want to waste the remaining singles that I had. So about half of this is not actually 3-plied in a traditional 3-ply, but it's chain plied because I just kind of said screw it and tied off the end and used that as a leader and just started chain plying the rest of my singles. So at some point in this, there is like a 6-inch section or so where I switched methods and will undoubtedly need to trim when I use this in some project down the road, because there's a big old joint in the middle that is not subtle at all, and also it's been a while since I have tried to chain ply anything, a long while, so it's kind of rough going in some places, but I'm still pleased with the outcome here. I'm just as happy with this little bit as I was with the larger chunk, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to use it for, so right now I think I'm just going to enjoy the fact that it exists. So that is that project. I have done quite a bit more spinning on the Huckleberry fiber, which was a merino bamboo silk blend, and here is my first bobbin, and it's not totally full. I have moved on to the second bobbin already. This is about 2 ounces. I haven't decided how I'm going to finish this yet. I haven't really even approached finishing the second half of that braid, so I've got some time to make up my mind about the way I want to do that. So part of the thing with this fiber is, and part of the reason why it has taken me almost a year to finish spinning it, is because I think I have just reached the conclusion that despite my best intentions, I don't enjoy spinning merino all that much. And it could be because of the bamboo content as well, and silk is also extremely slippery, but this stuff is a pain to spin. I'm doing okay with it, but I'm not enjoying it in the same way that I have with other fibers that are both in a carded preparation, so with the intention of being spun in a woolen style. So when you think about woolen versus worsted spinning, woolen is when the fibers are all kind of like and you spin it in a semi-long draw typically. So there's a lot of air intermixed in the fiber. You're trapping air in it, and the yarn itself is really light and lofty and springy, versus a worsted style spinning, which is when you do like the little bitty inchworm style or drafting method, I suppose, and thus you're pinching the air out of the fiber, and so you get a yarn that's a lot more sturdy and a lot less fuzzy. So, and they both have their different uses and purposes and values. Worsted yarn makes stuff that's super duper duper, or excuse me, not worsted, woolen yarn makes things that's very, very, very warm because of all that insulated and trapped air. Hi. But it's, because it's so fuzzy, it can obscure texture patterns and color work and things like that. And it also tends to have less yardage, I think. I guess that would depend on how you spin it. But anyway, it will also pill easier because of the airy nature of it. So worsted yarn is when all of the fibers are parallel and they have been prepped in a combed. So if you think of like a hackle, which is a spinning or fiber preparation tool that has combs or teeth, I suppose, usually on a board, and the fiber gets lashed across those combs and then pulled out, usually through something called a diz. And that's where you get these really pretty, where is mine, braids. Where did I do it? Right in front of me. Where you get the kind of braids that you see often sold on Etsy or at fiber festivals and stuff. So this has been combed. They sound really similar. So this has been combed, and you can see how everything is going top to bottom. So this is, if I was really going to work with the preparation in the way that it was intended, I would be doing some kind of inchworm drafting method, which I have found that I don't really love, which is fine. Part of the process of knitting and spinning and crafting in general is finding out and discovering for yourself what it is about each of those crafts that you enjoy. You know, maybe you really love knitting shawls and you love lace weight, so you buy mostly lace weight, but that might have happened after you bought a bunch of worsted and you have, you know, chunky yarn in your stash that you'll probably never use because that's just not what you love to knit with. That's totally fine. There's no fiber police. Same thing with spinning. You know, you have to try things to find out what you like about them. And in my trying of different techniques and things, I have discovered that I prefer to do a woolen style draft, which is more of that long draw kind of drafting method, where your twist enters your fiber consistently and you control the pinch and it just zooms. I really enjoy that. So sitting there going like this is not something I particularly love. And that's kind of what I'd have to do with something like this. And the reason I mention this is because I am cheating, frankly, and I am using my combed top to spin in a semi-woolen preparation. And the way that I am doing that is by pulling out tufts at a time, just one or two probably get about 1.5 staples, the staple being the length of the fiber. I pull out one, I thought I do. Okay, so here would be about the amount, actually this is a little smaller, I would grab probably 2 or 3 times this much, but about this length of the fiber. And then what you can do is you can spin over the fold, which is that you fold the fiber in half, the staple in half, and then you either spin from the corner or from the middle of the fiber, and you can see that it kind of pulls out a loop which mimics or sort of mimics a carded preparation of your wool. So even though this is combed and it's parallel and wants to slide out long ways, like, let's see, like this, you can kind of get the idea of a prep where the fibers are all mishmashed by creating a vortex by spinning from a folded piece of fiber. So that is what I'm doing, and once I figured out that I could do that, this has started to go a lot faster. So I think I will hopefully have this complete. I would really like to finish it before I go over into the Portland area in a couple of weeks, because if I don't beat that deadline, that means this will have been sitting in my stash for a year, which, if I'm gonna buy more, which I would like to while I'm over there, I really feel like I should have completed this. So that's what I'm doing with that. This is Huckleberry Knits. Huckleberry Knits, yarn and fiber, linked in the doobly-doo, along with all of my other show notes. By the way, there will be a link to those below the video. So that's spinning thing 2. So finish the Polworth, working on the Merino bamboo, and another thing that I started doing this week, and I'm not entirely sure what prompted this, but I pulled out a finished project from a while back, and it split into 2 hanks as well. So this is the second hank, which I have not touched yet. This is a BFL silk blend from, I cannot remember who. This was one of the first spinning projects that I ever did on my wheel, and probably the first time I have ever purchased like nice spinning fiber for myself. Everything else that I had spun with up to this point was like super duper cheap roving, like rough roving from Knit Picks, I think. I don't really even remember. Anyway, so I bought this, and it was this beautiful dark purple into a really bluey violet, and then it got into these gold and orange and bright fuchsia. So you can kind of see that. It's not the most even, for one thing, and also I did the world's worst job plying this ever. Not only because I didn't know what I was doing, but also because I made no attempt to match the colors at all, which I think I would have been fine with. I don't care necessarily that all of the oranges go with the oranges or the purples go with the purples or anything like that. But what I ended up with in a lot of this was kind of a mustard orange with, this is not even the worst bit. This half of the fiber turned out a little bit better. But yeah, I ended up with these like greeny gold bits against the purple, and see, this is not even showing up. It was hideous. It was awful. And my plying job on this was terrible also. Here's another bit. I mean, it's so underplied in some spaces, and I'm never ever going to use this because I don't like the yarn that I made. So on one hand, it's learning fiber. We're not ever going to be perfect on our first try at something. I have since improved and have started producing yarn that I like. But I pulled this out. I was thinking, what am I going to do? Should I donate this? Who wants it? And then I thought, you know what you could do, Christine, is you could unply it and then reply it in a way that you enjoy and in a way that you think you would get better use out of, better effect from the color, and something that would allow you to go back and perhaps cull some of the bits that are super duper overspun. So I thought, okay, well, sure. And what I did with the first braid of this was I propped it up on, I opened it up, I put it on my Swift, and then I spun it backwards back onto a bobbin on my wheel. So when you're spinning singles, when you're spinning your first bit, you spin S-wise, so you spin clockwise, and then when you ply, you spin with a Z twist, so you spin it backwards so that the plies really grab onto each other. So what I did was, instead of a Z, I did an S, plied it back onto the wheel in a way that would help underply it. And then what I did was I found the end, and I took my handy dandy toilet paper tube bobbins and just started pulling that 2-ply apart. And I was just kind of sitting there wrapping the yarn in my hands while I was doing that, while I was also treadling and unplying the yarn as it was coming out of my wheel. So I was pulling it towards me out of the orifice and pulling the yarn apart, pulling the plies apart while I did that. So it was becoming progressively looser and then also easier to separate. I had finished this yarn, and gently finished, meaning I had soaked it and dried it beforehand. So some bits of it are a little fuzzier than they were initially, which is fine, and actually kind of worked in my favor in keeping the yarn a little bit stable. The nice thing about this is that I have been able to find bits of the yarn that were really overplied, or not overplied, overspun, and particularly thin, and have stopped being soft and fluffy and lovely, and were instead like floss hard. So I could just trim those bits out while I was doing that. So what I have so far is one of these. I had another one of approximately the same size, and it was starting to, the cup, I guess, was starting to collapse on itself. So in order to not end up with a tangled mess, I wound it off onto my ball winder, which is what I will do with this eventually as well. I have a little bit more to go on my first bobbin, so I've got this much left, and then I have to do this one, and then I'm going to have like 5 bobbins worth of singles that I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with. I think I would probably attempt to chain ply them so that I don't end up with the weird and ugly color mixing, which I know this does not look that bad from here, and particularly because it's dark, you're not seeing everything, and it looks a lot tamer in the hank than it does in person, which I assure you, it's not pretty. So that is my kind of oddball project. I don't know why I decided that this was going to be a good idea, because although it is working, hi cat, it's going to take forever and a day to do. So I will have that going for quite a while, and then hopefully I'll have some yarn that I can use and that I like. So if nothing else, it will be a good experiment to see how my spinning has improved, or if this experiment is even something that I would attempt in the future, because according to the internet, it can be done. So we'll see. That is all I have to show for spinning this week. I've got 2 sleepy cats down here who are now lounging all over the yarn and getting hair everywhere. So I think that is everything that I have to show you this week. Managed to come in under 40 minutes, which is pretty good because it's still plenty warm in this room. I think I said everything that I needed to say at the beginning of the episode in terms of administrative stuff, but again, I just wanted to extend a huge thank you to anyone who has come by or who has reached out to me on Instagram. I love interacting with people there so far, and I know that for myself, that's not always the easiest thing to initiate conversations online with people. So if you have, super grateful for your initiative. That means a lot to me. It makes it a lot easier for those of us who are a little more introverted, perhaps. I am almost at 100 subscribers. I think I was at 99 earlier today. So that's kind of incredible too, and boggles my mind for the 2 episodes that I've got. So if you are a subscriber, I'm extremely grateful for your support, and I hope to see you guys all here again next week. Not next week, 2 weeks, which actually might be an episode coming to you from Portland, because I will be visiting my parents and going to a fiber festival that's held in the town that I grew up in. So maybe I'll get a chance to film some things there and show you what the Oregon Flock and Fiber Festival looks like for those of you who aren't local. So again, have a wonderful couple of weeks. Go in peace. Happy knitting.